time to talk about meetings. Specifically, here are the 5 meetings you need to know as a manager. We've all been here before. We've been sitting in a meeting and people are talking about this topic and then they drift to that topic and then it's some other topic and nothing seems to be getting done. Nothing seems to be being decided. And we are wondering, where is the time going? And 20 minutes go by, 30 minutes go by, 60 minutes go by, and we get frustrated because we've been doing nothing and nothing gets accomplished. Does this sound familiar? The challenge is that many people haven't been trained on how to run a good meeting. And so when an issue comes up that they need to solve, the first thing that comes to mind is, let's have a meeting. And they'll invite anyone and everyone to this meeting and hope that maybe something will come of it. The problem is that leads to very ineffective and inefficient meetings and just frustrates people. Not only that, it doesn't necessarily solve the problem that you're there in the first place to solve. So, what I'm going to propose right now are 5 meetings, 5 different types of meetings that you as a manager can run with your team and with other people in order to ensure that you're getting the most out of the work that you're doing and you're engaging your team in the best way possible. First meeting type is your operations or operational meeting. The operational meeting is your day-to-day meeting that you're going to be scheduling with your team or whoever you need to work with. The purpose of this meeting is to either share information, so you're communicating information, you're brainstorming solutions, or you're needing to make a decision. If it's not one of these 3 things, then you need to rethink about what the purpose of the meeting is and if you even need to have a meeting. Go into this meeting with a clear understanding of what you're trying to do. If you are sharing information, say for example, here is the latest policy on this new thing, or here is the company directive on whatever, or let me show you this slide deck, whatever it happens to be, know that you're going in to share information. The purpose of this meeting is to get information communicated to your team members so that they understand what they need to do next. If the meeting is about solving a problem, understand what that problem is. This is where you can brainstorm solutions. Make sure that everyone going into the meeting knows that's the purpose of it, and that by the end of it, you need to have a list of possible solutions or avenues that you can explore further, or assignments that can be given out to team members. They need to know that the whole point of this is to try to solve a problem, or to try to identify what the problem is you're trying to solve. Sometimes it's even difficult to know what's going wrong. And finally, maybe it's about making a decision. There may be several options available to you on a particular topic, but you need to come to some sort of consensus or decide on the next steps forward. Maybe it's about you communicating that decision. Maybe it's about you collaborating with your team members or your colleagues to come up with a path forward. Whatever it is, make sure everyone knows that the whole point of this is to get to that decision point. And when I say you need to communicate this in advance, it can go in the meeting invite itself, in the topic, in the subject line, put down the title, something along the lines of sharing information about such and such topic, or we need to make a decision about X, Y, or Z. Make sure it's clear in advance, and even when you start the meeting, make sure that you set the stage by saying, here's what we're trying to do with this meeting. These meetings need to be scheduled whenever you need to schedule them. These are your operational day-to-day meetings. If you need to have a meeting this afternoon, great, schedule the meeting. If it needs to be tomorrow, great, schedule it for tomorrow. It's whenever you need to, because this is the day-to-day business that you have to get done. But the key is, just because you schedule a meeting for 30 minutes or 60 minutes, if you finish the business early, you can end the meeting early. You can get out of there. There's no reason to keep the meeting going for the full hour. Get out of there as soon as the decision's been made, the information's been shared, or you've figured out what the solution to your problem is. Meeting type number 2 is your business review or project review meeting. This meeting is very similar to one of your operations meeting where you're sharing information, but the difference being is that it's really focused on the key metrics of your business or the project that you're working on. Basically, each member of the team needs to provide an update on what they are working on or the status of the project they are on. So focus is on what are the key metrics of the performance measured. You don't want people giving you their life story and every thing that they are working on, every email they're receiving. That's going to take up too much time. The updates need to be short, only a few minutes long, in order to communicate the key pieces of information. Well, hello. I swear I didn't plan it, but these chairs are perfectly colored for my next point. Part of the update needs to provide some kind of metric as to the performance. And typically you'll have a 3-color system. It'll either be green, it'll be yellow, or it'll be red. Green being everything's on track, everything's proceeding according to the correct timetable, there's nothing to worry about, you're working the project. Great. Yellow is where there may be issues, where there may be a risk to the timing of the project or the successful completion. There could be some problems. It's not necessarily problematic yet, but there are issues that you are actively needing to address, otherwise there might be problems later. And finally, red is if things are going bad. Timelines are not going to be met, the project will not work the way it's designed or where it's intended, or whatever the thing you're working on is not going to be completed correctly, and you need help. You need support in order to solve the problem. So that's when something gets marked red. The trick as a manager running one of these meetings is to ensure that you are asking enough questions to get to the correct information. Your employees are going to default to providing you with a more rosy colored picture because they don't want to upset you. You're the boss. You want to make sure you're getting the right information, so engage your team members, engage your colleagues when they're providing an update to ensure that if they're listing something as green, it is actually green. Or if something is yellow, that it's not actually red. So it's really important to make sure that you are asking good questions in these meetings. Another important aspect to these business or project update meetings is to really think about who your audience is. Is the audience you as the manager, or is it the team as a whole? If it's about you, great. Make sure you're setting that expectation so that they know the updates are being provided to ensure that you have all the details required to manage everything moving forward. If the purpose of the meeting, though, is to ensure that the team as a whole understands what's going on, make sure that's communicated as well. Because you may find instances where people are providing updates to things that other team members don't have any real input on or impact on. You don't want to waste their time. But if they need to know that extra information, if they need to know the larger context and the status of what's going on, make sure that everyone knows that going in so that it's clear as to what they need to be aware of so they can do their jobs more effectively. Finally, these meetings need to be scheduled on a very regular time frame. If it's just a general business update, how the team is doing sort of overall, these meetings can be done usually once a month. Make sure it's in everyone's calendar for that time frame. Possibly once a quarter, depending on what you're working on, but once a month is usually sufficient. If it's on a project basis, then it needs to be much more frequent. So at the least once a week, but especially if you're approaching your go live, the meetings need to be daily or possibly even multiple times a day, depending on the scope of the work. So the time frames may change, but it has to be a regular frequency and that everyone can have enough time to prep for them and provide the correct information. Incidentally, in case you're curious, I'm currently walking along the waterfront on the eastern side of Toronto. I don't know how well it shows up way in the background, but you can see a bit of the Toronto skyline with the CN Tower. Meeting number 3 is your one-on-one with each of your team members. A one-on-one meeting is a meeting you schedule with each and every one of your team members. Everyone on your team needs to have a one-on-one meeting with you as their boss so as to give you a chance to see what's going on with them, but also give them an opportunity to have time with you. It's just as important for them to have that experience as it is for you to be effective in your role as a manager. You need to be asking 2 questions in each of your one-on-one meetings. You can ask them in other meetings, but definitely in your one-on-one meetings, you need to be asking these questions. First question is, what are the challenges you are facing right now? Either today, or this week, or this period, What are they having difficulty with? And then wait and listen. Find out what they say. Pay attention to how they say it, because they may be facing some challenges, but they may not openly say it. Watch their body language, watch hesitations, watch awkwardness in their speech. These are clues that something may not be going well. Just pay attention to it. And maybe nothing is going wrong, but you want to make sure that you are engaging them to find out what their problems are, so you can then ask the second question. The second question is, how can I help you solve these problems? Now, I want to be clear about this. This is not about you doing their work or actively fixing the work on their behalf. You're not swooping in like some superhero to, rid them of all their problems. The employees still need to do their job and they still need to do their work. But are there obstacles in their way that you can help clear away? Maybe you can talk to a different manager who can clear some obstacle with a different department. Maybe it's a matter about you having a conversation with a different employee. Maybe it's about requesting a new piece of software or some additional training. Whatever it happens to be, there are things that you as a manager can do to make your employees' jobs easier, but ultimately it's their job to solve the problem. You can just smooth out the road for them. These meetings need to be scheduled. I recommend once every other week or twice a month. That's usually enough frequency in order to keep in touch with what's happening, but also, especially if you have a large team, to allow you as the manager enough time to schedule them into your own calendar so you have a chance to meet with everybody. The trick is that don't put these meetings off. If you need to, if you can't make one of these meetings, absolutely, you have to reschedule it. This is an opportunity for you to demonstrate to your employees that what they say matters, and that builds a lot of trust with them. The third meeting type is your performance management meeting. This is kind of like your one-on-one because you're meeting with each of your individual employees, but it's very focused on their development. The purpose is you want to both discover what are the things that they are interested in developing in themselves from their own personal career progression perspective. Maybe they are interested in learning a new area or developing a particular skill in a particular area. This is a meeting where you find that out. Alternatively, it can be a meeting where you talk to them about what skills they need to develop for this particular role. Maybe they have to complete a certain type of certification, or it's possible that they need to have exposure on a kind of machinery or process or software, and they don't have that yet. So you want to identify what those gaps are in their knowledge and learning and find a way of meeting them. Once you've determined what they need to develop in, then it's a matter of figuring out what steps can be taken in order for them to meet that gap, build that skill, learn that thing, whatever it happens to be, and you set some targets and goals around achieving that. Typically, these meetings are set up once a quarter, once every 3 or 4 months, with an extra session at the beginning of the year to identify where the gaps are, and maybe an extra session at the end of the year to do sort of a year in review of how well they did. The final meeting number 5 that you need to schedule with your team is the engagement meeting. What is an engagement meeting? Well, this is something I learned on my last job, and basically it's a unstructured meeting that you have with your team in order to give them an opportunity to get to know each other. And this is especially valuable nowadays, post-COVID, where not everyone's going to be in the office at the same time. And so the casual, day-to-day bumping into each other and having the conversation, chatting over coffee or whatever happens to be, that's not happening as frequently now between employees. And you kind of need to get in there and engage them and making sure that they are building those relationships, making friends, and learning how to enjoy each other as people. An important aspect is that these meetings need to be unstructured. You can't go in there with a plan, because that's not how human engagement works. has to allow for flexibility. It has to allow for conversation to evolve organically. Now, for the first few times you do this, you may need to come in with some few ideas of to how to get the conversation going. But the point is that you're not trying to achieve anything. There's not to be any work really discussed during this meeting. This is not a project meeting or an excuse to get additional work done. The whole point of this is simply to let people get to know each other. Now, the times where I've seen this done well, they've done everything from story time, where each person is encouraged to tell a story about something in their life. We did one where people told a story about their very first job, and it was great fun to learn what people were experiencing. Other times, we've done silly things like scavenger hunts and Pictionary. But these are the kinds of things that can bring people together, create connection, and allow people to have fun. Now, the examples I just gave are very corporate focused. If you're in a more of a field organization, your team's out working at a job site, some of these may not necessarily work as well, but the point is that it's not about having a structured meeting. There's no objective aside from simply putting these people together and letting them mix and letting them feel like they can connect with one another. This could be as simple as, let's all go for coffee, or maybe we're going to have lunch together. These are perfectly acceptable types of meetings in order to get people together. These engagement meetings need to be held regularly. When we were doing them effectively, they were being held once a week. And maybe about half an hour to an hour is sufficient, but it needs to be regular to give priority to each of your team members to feel like they have an excuse to just let loose and be casual with each other. One final note about the engagement meetings is that they have to be inclusive. If people are being quiet and drifting off to the background and not saying anything and surreptitiously checking their own email, you might want to bring them back into the fold, bring them back in with the group, and encourage everyone to feel like they belong with the rest of your team. Okay, in summary, here are your 5 meetings. 1 is your operational meeting. You only need to schedule these whenever you need them, but for only as long as you need to schedule them. Number 2 is your business or project update meeting. Schedule these on a regular basis, typically once a month, maybe once a quarter, but if it's a project, probably more frequently at once a week, maybe once a day. The 3rd is your one-on-one meeting with each of your employees. Schedule these every other week, ideally, but definitely make sure that you are committing to meeting with each of your team members regularly. Number 4 is your performance management meeting, your performance update meeting. These need to be scheduled probably about once a quarter, with an extra session right at the beginning to do sort of a year in advance, and a session at the end to do a year in review on how the employee did, filling the gaps in their knowledge and skill base. And number 5, your final type of meeting that you want to schedule is your engagement meeting. This is an excuse for your team to come together and connect in a way that's not necessarily work-related. Ideally, you want to schedule this every week for about an hour. That's usually sufficient. So, was any of that helpful? If so, let me know in the comments if there are any other meetings that you run with your teams. Oh, I seem to be entertaining dogs as well here. Well, yeah, let me know in the comments what other meetings you run with your team to make sure that you are being an effective manager. And if you're following me on YouTube, then click like and subscribe. If you're following me on LinkedIn, then follow my profile for regular updates. I update this about once every week. And if you're interested in more communication and leadership tips, then click on the link below to download my free guide on asking great questions. My name is Matthew Devine. I'm an executive and leadership coach based here in Toronto, Canada, and I support new engineering managers with practical leadership tips and communication to help them be more effective and more inspiring to the teams they lead.